Well, hello, and welcome to I Love Gay today. And we're in Nashville, Tennessee today, and we are here with someone I've come to know over the years, Zeke Stokes. How are you, Zeke?
I'm doing great, Matt. How are you doing?
Fantastic. It was great. I was down in DC not that long ago and meeting up with Ben Finzel over at Change Agencies. And it was wonderful when your name came up. We were talking about some of the work they're all doing. And because I looked at him and I said, I know Zeke. When I knew Zeke, he was in New York and he was at GLAAD. And I went to some of the events you put together. But yeah, you've come a long way. You were at GLAAD in New York and now you're in Tennessee. But yeah, tell us a little bit about what you've been up to.
I was at GLAAD as vice president of programs and then
Yeah.
chief programs officer for about 5 years, ending in 2019. And I thought it'd be a great time to leave and sort of start my own consulting practice. Of course, we know what happened a few months later, which is
Yep.
COVID-19. So it was a really interesting time to start a new business. Thankfully, GLAAD and Sarah Kate Ellis, the president over there, is incredible. She said when I told her I wanted to go that the only way she would let me go is if I agreed that GLAAD would be my first client, and so they still are. And I do a lot of consulting work with them on voter engagement and policy and a number of things. But started my own practice with a variety of clients, sort of a little bit the summation of a lot of different kinds of work I've done over the years. So on the surface, my client roster doesn't look like it makes a whole lot of sense, but it works for me. So GLAAD is one of my clients, and obviously very important to me. I've also done a lot of work with a number of corporate clients and some other nonprofit clients. Elizabeth Dole Foundation, which is a wonderful nonprofit in DC, nonpartisan nonprofit, despite the fact that it bears Senator Joel's name, that does a lot of work with veterans. And of course, I was at Service Members Legal Defense Network for a while, doing Don't Ask, Don't Tell repeal. So that's an incredibly important community to me. And I relocated to Nashville after the pandemic with my husband, and I'm doing a lot of work in country music, PR, and management. So it's a really interesting group of things that makes it fun to wake up and go to work every day.
I can see that. Well, it's great that it's actually I think it's important nowadays to kind of be diversified and varied and in client base because things are moving around a lot as far as where the opportunities lie. But I find
Yeah.
it interesting as you've been describing, and then even as I've known you, politics and strategy and so forth. That seems to have been a kind of a core part of a lot of what interests you as well.
Yeah, I started my career running political campaigns in my home state of South Carolina, and eventually moved more into advocacy, doing a lot of work around Don't Ask, Don't Tell repeal, as I said, and defeating DOMA at the Supreme Court and getting marriage equality across the finish line. Of course, we have so much more work to do as a movement, but really, really proud of those things. But I think the thing that attracted me to GLAAD when I went over there was this intersection of politics and pop culture, because I think media is so the political media and the entertainment media, it's all so intertwined. People are getting their news on the Kardashians at the same place that they're finding out, what President Biden is up to on immigration. It's all the same media these days. And so I think it's really interesting to find those intersections. And I love the work at GLAAD because that's so much of what GLAAD is about. But yeah, politics has always been really important to me. I was the kid with the Dukakis sign on my bedroom wall when I was 12 years old. So always been a big dork in that respect. But if you want to make change in this country, thankfully it's still the best way.
Yeah. But you were also in between a lot of, especially SLDN and GLAAD. You were also with Media Matters for America, which it sounds like it's exactly very aligned with everything you've described so far.
Yeah, I was at Media Matters for a hot minute. The work they do is so important, monitoring right-wing media and trying to contain those narratives that before they make it to mainstream media and become tropes and misinformation that movable and swayable voters will hear and believe. I was there for about a year before it was Rich Ferraro actually at GLAAD who called me and said, "Hey, I've got this job description. We're about to hire for this position. I'd love for you to read it and see what you think. See if I'm really, see if you know anybody." It was, of course, a trick because when I read it, I was like, "Oh, this sounds like a job for me." And he said, "Perfect. That's exactly what I was hoping you would say." I got recruited away from there, but I love Media Matters and the work they're doing. I think is more important than ever as we try to contain narratives of hate and misinformation on the dark web and all these places that they originate before they make it even to Breitbart and Fox News and all these places where they reach really wide audiences. It's incredibly important.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And it's interesting too with when you were with SLDN, you also were a part of Transmilitary. It was a documentary, correct?
Yeah, that's right. The repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, unfortunately, didn't include trans people because trans people weren't included in the law in the first place. And so when we got Don't Ask, Don't Tell across the finish line at the end of 2011, there was still a lot of work to do. We didn't have marriage yet, but we also did not have open trans service. And so a group of us got together and said, we really need to shine a light on this and tell these stories. And Fiona Dawson, who's an incredible activist and filmmaker, and I and a number of others got together and said, hey, we have to do this. It's an important part of telling these stories. And I'm, really proud of it. It premiered at South by Southwest and was named one of the best documentaries of the festival. And then we were able to take it to Capitol Hill and show it to lawmakers so that they could understand that these people were already serving, in some cases in silence, and in some cases openly to their units and commanding officers. So, but thankfully, we were able to get that across the finish line as well. We had a bit of a hiccup with the Trump presidency, but it was one of the first things that President Biden did when he took office in 2021 was reverse that movement. So yeah, really, really proud of that too. Thank you for mentioning it.
I'm glad. But everything you've described so far up to this point, it seems to have really come together, not only for your own business, but now you're part of something even larger with change agencies. And tell us both about kind of like your role and how you fit in there, but also even what change agencies is all about.
Yeah. So I am a one-person operation. I have an assistant, but other than that, I'm a one-person operation. And so when Ben Finzel came to me with this idea that he had launched already called the Change Agency, sort of a confederation of folks who are either single member practitioners or have small firms, I was very intrigued because it's an opportunity to collaborate, bring other voices to the table, other kinds of experience, and work on projects together in a way that you couldn't as a single practitioner. So we collaborate pretty often on projects. So if I'm working on something that needs a climate angle, I may call Ben because that's his specialty. If I need an immigration angle, I may call someone else in the agencies. But really proud to be a part of that. It's not just an LGBTQ group of agencies. It's all people. It's all agencies led by people from marginalized communities. So the Latinx community, other people of color, LGBTQ, and it's a great idea. And I think over time it's going to really, really grow.
Yeah, no, I think it's amazing. Yeah, I've known Ben for many, many years, and so I've enjoyed seeing. I remember when they started, and I love seeing that it's continued to grow and expand. So this is great.
Yeah, Ben and I met when he was working for Widmeyer Communications back in the day, and I was consulting with them on a project around with the Consumer Product Safety Commission around pool safety. So we go back to that, and when he started this, he called me and said, "Hey, we think you might be a good addition." And so it's been a really rewarding and I think impactful idea that he brought to life.
Yeah, no, I think this is great. Anything exciting as we enter 2024 around the corner here?
Well, I hear we're going to have an election, but we'll see, right? It is exciting. I think this election is. I know we say this every time there's an election, but this election, if it does end up being a Trump Biden race, is going to be the most consequential election of our lifetimes. I mean, imagine a second Trump presidency without the fear of not getting reelected. It would be like 2020 to 2024 on steroids. And he's already telegraphing that he will use the federal government to go after his enemies. and using language that we haven't seen since Hitler in the 1920s and 30s on the campaign trail. It's very scary, and it's existential, I think, for the country, but it's also existential for our community, the LGBTQ community. Clarence Thomas, Ted Cruz, a number of folks have signaled that they want to turn back the clock on marriage. And, we saw what happened with Roe v. Wade and the Dobbs decision. This train of progress can go backward with the wrong people in the wrong seats. And I'm so happy that President Biden has been able to really double and triple down on undoing the damage that Trump did to the federal courts. And I think we just passed over 300 new federal judge appointees across the country by President Biden. We can't afford to lose these races as progressives, as LGBTQ people, but really as Americans. And so when you ask me what's exciting next year, that is exciting, but it's also terrifying, right?
I think many of us feel exactly the same way. And yes, I have these discussions with my husband all the time. It's just like it's going to be quite a ride between now and exactly 12 months from now.
Yeah, and I'm from South Carolina, so I know Nikki Haley pretty well. I think I love watching the horse race just from a political standpoint. I think if anyone could take Trump out, it would be her, but I just don't know that she has enough time and enough resources to make it happen. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, mostly I'm just glad that you're able to take a few moments of your time and kind of share a bit of your story with our audience, because I think the work you're doing is exciting, and I can't wait to see where it all goes and when we connect again in the real world.
Sure, I really appreciate it, and love watching what you do, and you've been such a stalwart for the community for really decades now, and we can't do this without our LGBTQ journalists and folks carrying the message. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you. Well, it's great to see you here, and look forward to connecting soon.
All right.
Take care.
Talk soon.
So good.